Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums, and today I have another weekly check-in video for the week of Sunday, January 18th through Saturday, January 24th, I believe is what it was. Hopefully I didn't mess up the dates. I do want to apologize and say thank you for being patient. I actually ended up having COVID at the beginning of the month all the way through last week. So everyone in my household got it. And so we were pretty out of it, and I was having a really hard time with my voice, which there may still be some of that residual that I'm still trying to kind of get back to 100%. So I don't recommend not taking care of yourself during this sick season, because there's a lot of stuff going around. So take your vitamins, take your supplements, take care of yourself out there, because you never know what you might get. It's kind of how it feels. All right, so let's see what this week has in store for us. Now, we do have the Capricorn new moon. I think it's today, if I'm not mistaken. We have a lot of different things with Chiron kind of squaring a lot of the things in Capricorn. So we're all kind of feeling this energy. This week may feel a little bit more intense. I know astrologically, Chiron kind of aspecting things can bring up a lot of different wounds, can bring up a lot of this sense of stuff that we need to address, things that maybe we may be feeling, even like as a collective, especially right now, where we're kind of feeling a lot of this intensity show up. So let's see what this week has in store as far as like what we can do as a collective, things to kind of keep in mind. So the very first thing is, what do we need to know as a collective for this week? We have the Hierophant, or the wise one in this deck, reversed. So let's see what we need to do. Here we have the Five of Cups reversed. What do we need to release? We have the Knight of Cups reversed, a lot of reversals. And then finally, what do we need to contemplate this week as a collective? So here we have the Crown of Coins, or this would be the King of Pentacles in traditional tarot. I'm also going to pull a card from the Moonology Messages deck, as we do have the Capricorn new moon, the first new moon for the year. I can't believe we're already moving through this month. So here we have Courage, Blood Moon, which I'm actually going to turn this card around, and I think we have our spread for the week. So let's kind of get into what these cards mean, I guess what my interpretation would be of these cards for the week, and kind of see what to expect and what we should kind of focus on. So with what we need to know, we have the Hierophant reverse. Now, the Hierophant to me is not just a card of like wisdom and learning and governing kind of energies, in the sense of a lot of different structures that may be in place, kind of keeping things together. I think that it is very much an energy of us also being very aware of what we're willing to learn, what we've been learning, what we've been kind of putting ourselves out there into and discovering about ourselves as individuals. Now, this being reversed, actually all of the cards being reversed this week, I feel like this is going to be more of an internalization of a lot of this energy this week, where we're a little bit more introspective. Maybe we are focused on, you know, ourselves as individuals, like what that means for us and how we are reacting to the external stimulus of these energies, as well as maybe the stories that we have within ourselves that are ready to kind of be reviewed, kind of recognized within our own potential like journey. Now, I know winter can be one of these times that can be a little bit more of an energetic drag for a lot of people, where they kind of feel like it's so cold, it's dark all the time, like there's not as much of like this like sense of, oh, I want to be outside and I want to do this and I want to be out and I want to see people. So I totally understand that January can feel a little bit more of like this month of trying to kind of just like move through the energy and kind of move into the motions of the next year. I think that with what we need to know is that maybe there's some stuff that we haven't really quite mastered. There's not as much wisdom as we may believe we have. There may be something that we're having to kind of review within ourselves. And the other thing with this is that I feel like the Hierophant is also very much tied to the energy of like government, governing agencies, traditional kind of elements that have to do with like the structures and kind of the essentially like the foundation that we've kind of laid for ourselves in society. So I think a lot of us are maybe looking within as far as like what that means for ourselves as individuals. Maybe we're looking at what we believe when it comes to a lot of these different structures or a lot of these different elements in our lives. And so a lot of us are kind of maybe trying to seek out our own personal wisdom when it comes to that. Maybe we're not wanting to be caught up in what it means to participate in the things that are currently going on. Maybe a lot of us are kind of like rethinking what that means for us as individuals, like what we're willing to kind of review within ourselves. And so with this being what we need to know is that maybe a lot of us are kind of in the sense of looking around, trying to kind of identify the different things and lessons and wisdom that we carry within ourselves before we kind of go out into the world and share that with others. So maybe we're being a little bit stubborn about certain things. Maybe we haven't really been learning what we need to learn. Maybe there's like some things that we have learned and we just haven't really been prepared to kind of share that with others yet. I think that's essentially the energy for this week, is that we're kind of feeling a little bit caught up in what does this mean for me and how can I bring this out into the world for everybody else. So with what we need to do, we have the Five of Cups reversed. Now, the Five of Cups is typically a card of like loss. It's talking about there's something that we emotionally don't really have any longer, or something that we're missing out on and that we're just not really seeing the potential there within the situation, especially when it comes to like partnerships, relationships, our feelings, our intuition. This being reversed, I feel like it may be hearkening back to the lessons of the Four of Cups, which is a card that really talks about discontent and just kind of feeling disappointed by what we have. It's kind of like I'm not really all that happy. I'm just gonna kind of sit here and pout and just be like, meh, I'm not very happy with the things that I have in my life, and I'm not really happy with how things are going. The Five of Cups tends to kind of magnify that in a way, because it's kind of showing us what we've lost, but also the potential for what is still available here. Now, this being, again, another reverse card, I feel like the energy is kind of saying like we're too focused on what we're missing or what we don't have, that we're not allowing ourselves to kind of see what is being offered up here, or what else is still here, what else there is available in the situation for us to work with. So energetically and emotionally this week, we may be feeling a little bit of this like kind of, I'm not really feeling it. I don't really like what's going on. I don't really like how I'm feeling about things. Maybe your intuition is kind of feeling a little bit off in some ways, or maybe you just feel like it's hard for you to kind of feel clearly what you want and what you have going on. And with this being what we need to do, is that maybe it's kind of saying like we got to kind of address a little bit of this, of like our own personal responsibility within the situation, so we're not kind of getting caught up in our own shit, so to speak. So I do think that the Five of Cups reverse, especially with the five as well of the Hierophant, there's a lot of change, but maybe it's just not happening the way that we thought it was going to. There's some sort of holdup. There's something that just isn't really marching forward the way that we want. And so there is a little bit of this sense of things aren't really moving how I thought they were going to be. There's just not enough of like the momentum that we were looking for. Now, when we go on to what we need to release, we have the Knight of Cups reversed. Now, this is very much about our feelings, our emotions. It's this romanticism that tends to kind of come with the Knight of Cups, because there is this like sense of viewing the world with like rose-colored lenses or glasses, I think is what they say. And so there is a little bit of this sense of maybe I'm just not really as prepared as I thought I was going to be for things to happen and for things to kind of move in the direction that they have been. And I think having the Knight of Cups reversed here is, especially with what we need to contemplate or what we need to release, we have a little bit of this energy of maybe we've been hanging on to these stories that don't really make sense for what is actually happening and what is going to come next. Like somebody is not going to come and save us from our own situation. So we're the ones that have to kind of be like, I may not have all the experience and I may not know everything, but I need to kind of get out there and do something with this energy. So I feel like with the Knight of Cups reversed this week, we are having to kind of reflect a little bit on like, what have we been carrying, and kind of maybe losing a little bit of sense of hope on, if that makes sense, especially with this being what we need to release. I think that it's kind of hearkening back to the energy and lessons of the Page of Cups, which can be a little bit more of not really having a lot of an understanding about what we're going to do when we move forward, but having a little bit of that sense of like, I'm so hopeful for like what's going to happen and how things are going to be. Now, if you're here in the US, I don't know about you guys, but I know for me personally, watching the news, keeping up with things, like that sense of hope I had for 2026, and then, you know, having to kind of deal with like illness right off the bat, you know, not being able to work, not being able to do a lot of different things and still trying to kind of recover. I've kind of struggled a little bit with like, oh, okay, I don't really know what to do with this energy now because it hasn't really turned around the way that I thought it was going to. So I'm not getting as much of like that forward momentum and movement that I had kind of anticipated prior to getting sick. So I think the energy is pretty similar as a collective, is that a lot of us are maybe having to kind of reflect back. We're having to kind of not say release our sense of hope, but maybe we are not quite as ready to kind of go out there and charge into the new thing and into this new world, so to speak, with the energy that we thought was going to help carry us forward. When I think of the Knight of Cups, especially reversed, I think that there's a lot of this sense of having to reflect on what we want, who we are, what we're doing, what we're going after. I feel like with any of the Knights, there's this like energy of we need to pay attention to what our intention really is, like what we're willing to kind of fight for in a lot of different ways. And I feel like the Knight of Cups is kind of giving us a little bit of that energy of, you know, have we really reflected on what we're doing, what we're focusing on, what it means for us as individuals, what we're trying to do with this energy as we kind of move forward. So I think it's a little bit interesting when we think of this energy. Now, if we move along to what we need to contemplate, we have the King of Pentacles reversed. Now, the Crown of Coins in this deck, or the King of Pentacles reversed, to me can talk about maybe we feel like we haven't really had a lot of stability. Maybe we haven't really been aware of like what it is that we've been focusing on and what we're building. And so maybe we need to kind of contemplate how we can kind of nurture a little bit more of this energy within ourselves. Maybe we're lacking some structure. Maybe we're lacking a more solid foundation. Maybe we don't really know what it is that we've been putting a lot of our energy into. So there is a little bit of this, like, I don't want to say back and forth, but maybe a little bit of a reflection of sorts, if that makes sense, with what we need to do, what we're doing, how that looks for us as individuals, and what we really truly desire out of the energy of what our focus has been on. Now, when I think of Pentacles, I think that it's a slow moving kind of energy. It's very steady. It's very physical. It can really talk about our behaviors. Like, how are we behaving? What are we doing with ourselves? Like, what are we thinking about? What have we been, aware of at this time with this energy? And so I think there's a little bit of this, I don't want to say mismatch of energy, but I think that maybe there is a little bit of this sense of trying to pay attention to, what our intention really is when it comes to, what we're building for ourselves, what we're focusing on. So I think at this current moment with this week's energy, a lot of us are maybe looking at our behaviors. We're looking at, our surroundings. We're, maybe reflecting a little bit on like what that means for us overall, what we're going to do with this energy moving forward. And so I think with the King of Pentacles here at the end, with all of these cards being reversed, it's going to be a little bit more of an introspective week where we're having to really tune back into ourselves as individuals and see what is going on internally before we kind of react externally. I think a lot of this can feel like a little bit of a slowdown. We can feel like things aren't really moving the way that we want them to. We may feel like maybe there's a little bit of resistance to some of the things that we're trying to do. Maybe we're feeling like what's kind of the point in some ways. Just because there's a lot of these, cups cards here in the middle that are kind of saying like there's a lot of feelings that we have. There's a lot of things that we're trying to either process or kind of focus on. And so we're kind of dealing with a little bit of that weird energy. And then having the, King of Pentacles reversed. I think at the end here with what we need to contemplate is that maybe some of the stuff that we've been really focused on isn't going to be as solid as we thought it was going to. And so maybe we're having to kind of go back into a different understanding about where our own personal energy is within that scope. And so maybe we're having to kind of pay attention to our physical existence. Maybe we need to reconnect a little bit more with our physical body. Maybe we need to look at our physical presence in the world at large and what that means. How are we showing up? Are we honoring what we want and what we need and what that means for us? And I feel like with the Capricorn new moon, that is always a very significant lesson during this time period. It's very much about the embodiment of this energy of, I have all these aspirations and all of these things that I would like to get done, but I also have to be very aware of, not to say limitations, but maybe the realizations of what is actually available to me as I kind of move into this energy. So I feel like with this week, there may be a hearkening back to looking at, checking in, number one, with ourselves, looking back at, what we have as far as like the intention for ourselves moving forward, and maybe not pushing forward in a way that is out of alignment with what is going on. Like maybe taking a step back, kind of looking at how we're really truly feeling, looking at like, what have we learned? What have we, what do we maybe need to kind of recheck within ourselves, and moving into that energy. Now for the moon messages, our Moonology message that we have for this week, we have courage. I know looking at everything that's going on here in the US, it can feel very disorienting, a little bit daunting. It can feel very much like, I don't know, like an alternate universe, like a Black Mirror episode, I guess would be the nicest way of putting it in a lot of ways. And so I think that the energy from the collective right now is that like we just need to kind of be encouraged enough within ourselves to kind of say this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I want to focus on, this is how I can kind of show up for myself in this brave new world, and how I can kind of change things in my own way. So I think that courage is here as a reminder that even in challenges, even in difficulty, there's still a lot of opportunities for us to grow and for us to focus on our most significant and immediate needs within our own lives, if that makes sense. I think that this is a wonderful time to kind of look at our communities, to look at, the people that we're surrounding ourselves, maybe kind of like step down from the big stage and look at, our neighbors, look at, our families, our kind of one-on-one significant relationships, and kind of checking in a little bit there. I think a lot of us are kind of needing this encouragement, so to speak, this like sense of, I'm not going to say it's going to be okay, but it's more of like, you'll get better. If that makes sense. It's like, it's not that the situation will always get better. Sometimes we get better at dealing with the situation, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's kind of the energy for this week, is that it's trying to give us a sense of, we can tune into this energy, and there is something that is trying to show up, even if it feels like we're having to kind of do a lot of these things on our own. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me this week. I know that I haven't really been posting as much. I appreciate you guys being here, for all of the subscribers. It's been fabulous learning more about myself on YouTube and trying to kind of share a little bit more of the things that I love and things that speak to my heart. So I want to say thank you. Let me know what you guys think about this reading, and let me know what you guys think about some of the other things that I post, if that's also something that you enjoy. I want to say thank you. I hope that this year is treating you kindly, that you're taking time out to kind of honor your own seasons in your own life as well. So please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.